Let me ask you something. If you live with type 2 diabetes, have you ever been told to stop drinking milk completely? Or maybe you've seen videos claiming that one special kind of milk can reverse diabetes almost overnight. Neither extreme is true. The reality sits somewhere in the middle, and that's where the science becomes interesting. Because while no milk on earth can cure type 2 diabetes, the kind of milk you choose can influence what happens to your blood sugar after a meal. And for many people, it's one of the easiest changes they can make without turning their entire diet upside down. What surprised researchers is that milk doesn't always behave the way people expect. Many assume that because milk contains natural sugar, it must automatically raise blood sugar in a harmful way. But that's not the whole story. Researchers from the University of Guelph and the University of Toronto examined what happened when people drank milk with breakfast cereal. The results were surprising. Compared with drinking water alongside the same cereal, milk helped reduce the rise in blood sugar after the meal. And when the milk contained more protein, the effect became even stronger. Think about that for a moment. A simple glass of milk acting almost like a buffer between a carbohydrate-heavy meal and a sharp glucose spike. Not a cure, not a miracle, just a smarter way of eating. And that's what this entire video is about. Not magic, not hype, just practical decisions backed by research. Today we're going to walk through the 5 best milk choices for people concerned about blood sugar control. We'll start with a dependable option that requires almost no lifestyle change. Then we'll work our way toward the single most powerful strategy researchers have identified. And here's the interesting part. The number one choice isn't a brand. It isn't expensive, and it isn't exotic. In fact, many people already have everything they need sitting in their refrigerator. Let's start with number 5. Lactose-free and ultra-filtered cow's milk. For people who enjoy dairy and don't want to give it up, this is often the easiest place to begin. Regular cow's milk contains about 12 grams of lactose per cup. Lactose is a natural sugar, and sugar is one of the main things that influences blood glucose. Ultra-filtered milk changes that equation. The filtering process removes some of the lactose while concentrating the protein. That means less sugar and more protein in the same glass. And protein plays an important role because it slows digestion and helps reduce the speed at which glucose enters the bloodstream. Lactose-free milk works a little differently. The sugar remains, but an enzyme breaks it down ahead of time, making it easier to digest. For many adults over 60, that's an advantage all by itself, because digestion often becomes less efficient with age. And what happens next may surprise you even more. Researchers continued exploring the relationship between dairy protein and blood sugar, and the results became even more interesting. A study published in the journal Nutrients found that concentrated whey protein helped improve long-term blood sugar markers in people with prediabetes. The message wasn't that milk is medicine. The message was that protein matters, and some milk choices provide a lot more of it than others. Imagine someone like Margaret, 64 years old. Every morning she enjoyed a latte. Every morning she noticed her glucose readings climbed higher than she wanted. She assumed the only solution was giving up dairy completely. Instead, she made a much smaller change. She switched from regular milk to an unsweetened, ultra-filtered version with significantly more protein and less sugar. Same coffee, same breakfast table, same routine. But a noticeably gentler rise in blood sugar afterward. Sometimes the most effective changes aren't dramatic. They're simply strategic. This becomes even more important after the age of 60. At that stage of life, 2 things often begin happening at the same time. First, muscle mass gradually declines. Doctors call this sarcopenia. Second, the body's ability to handle carbohydrates efficiently often weakens. A milk that delivers more protein while reducing the sugar load helps address both concerns simultaneously. That's why lactose-free and ultra-filtered milk earn the number 5 spot on this list. They're familiar, they're easy to find, and they require almost no adjustment to your daily habits. If you want to try this yourself, the next time you're shopping, pick up 1 carton and look at the nutrition label. You're looking for 2 things: higher protein, lower sugar. then use it exactly where you already use milk, coffee, tea, breakfast cereal. Nothing else needs to change. But there is another option that goes beyond protein. An option that doesn't just affect what happens in your bloodstream. It also influences what happens inside your gut. And that brings us to number 4, fermented dairy drinks. Plain kefir and unsweetened drinkable yogurt. At first glance, they may seem similar to ordinary milk. But biologically, they're doing something very different. Fermentation changes the equation. During fermentation, beneficial bacteria consume some of the milk sugar before the product ever reaches you. That means less sugar for your body to process. But that's only half of the story. Those same bacteria enter your digestive system and become part of a much larger process involving the gut microbiome. And researchers are learning that the gut microbiome plays a surprisingly important role in blood sugar control. The healthier and more diverse those bacterial populations are, the better the body often manages glucose and inflammation, which means a simple glass of kefir may be helping in ways most people never see. And the evidence supporting that idea is becoming difficult to ignore. Large observational studies have repeatedly found that people who regularly consume yogurt tend to have a lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes. That doesn't prove yogurt prevents diabetes on its own, but it tells researchers there's something worth paying attention to. And when controlled trials began examining probiotic-rich fermented drinks, the results became even more interesting. Some studies reported improvements in markers related to blood sugar control and inflammation compared with non-fermented alternatives. In other words, the live cultures appeared to be doing more than simply helping digestion. Imagine someone like Robert, 69 years old. Every morning he reached for a glass of fruit juice. It seemed healthy. After all, fruit juice comes from fruit. But what he didn't realize was how quickly that sugar entered his bloodstream. One small change altered the equation. He replaced that juice with a small glass of plain, unsweetened kefir alongside breakfast. Instead of fast sugar, he was getting protein, healthy fats, and beneficial bacteria. The result wasn't magic. It was simply a steadier start to the day, and his digestion appreciated the change as much as his glucose meter did. This matters even more after the age of 65. Research shows that the diversity of beneficial bacteria living in the gut tends to decline as we get older, and that decline is often associated with poorer blood sugar control and higher levels of inflammation. Fermented dairy is one of the easiest ways to support those bacterial populations every single day. If you decide to try it, keep one rule in mind. Choose plain and unsweetened versions. That's important. Many flavored yogurts and drinkable dairy products contain surprising amounts of added sugar. In some cases, more than people would ever expect. The ingredient list should be short, simple, easy to understand. And here's an interesting detail. The helpful bacteria in fermented dairy thrive on fiber, which means the benefits become even stronger when they're paired with high-fiber foods. We'll come back to that idea later. But what if dairy simply doesn't agree with you? What if you want something with almost no sugar at all? That's where number 3 enters the picture. For some people, it may be the easiest upgrade on the entire list. Unsweetened almond milk. The mechanism here is almost surprisingly simple. Almond milk is mostly water combined with a small amount of ground almonds. As a result, it contains very little carbohydrate. And carbohydrates are the primary nutrient responsible for raising blood sugar. Compared with traditional dairy milk, unsweetened almond milk contains only a fraction of the carbohydrate load. Less carbohydrate in the glass means less glucose for your body to manage afterward. That's the appeal. That's the advantage. And for many people, that's enough to make a meaningful difference. But there's one word you absolutely cannot ignore: unsweetened. Because the moment manufacturers add sugar, many of the benefits disappear. Some flavored almond milks contain enough added sugar to completely undermine the reason people choose them in the first place. The label matters. And understanding that label can save you from a mistake many people don't realize they're making every day. Nutritional analyses consistently place unsweetened almond milk among the lowest carbohydrate milk options available. That's one of the reasons diabetes educators frequently recommend it. For people who drink multiple cups of coffee or tea each day, the sugar savings can quietly add up. Imagine someone like Susan, 58 years old. She drinks 3 cups of coffee every day. Nothing unusual, nothing excessive. But each cup contains milk, and every small amount of sugar adds to the total. Susan wasn't consuming a large dessert. She wasn't drinking sugary sodas, yet she was carrying a steady stream of extra carbohydrates she barely noticed. When she switched to unsweetened almond milk, she didn't change anything else. Same coffee, same routine, same schedule. But one hidden source of sugar disappeared, and sometimes that's exactly where progress begins. Now, there is one important limitation. Almond milk is naturally very low in protein. That matters because after the age of 60, protein becomes increasingly important for preserving muscle mass and strength. So while almond milk is an excellent low-sugar choice for coffee, tea, and cereal, it shouldn't be viewed as a major protein source. For that, we need to move one step higher on the list, because number 2 manages to combine 2 benefits that rarely appear together: very low sugar and high-quality protein. The answer is unsweetened soy milk. Among plant-based milks, soy is unique. It provides a complete protein, meaning it contains all the essential amino acids your body needs. That's something most plant milks simply cannot match. At the same time, soy milk remains very low in carbohydrate, so it helps from both directions. Less sugar entering the system, more protein helping slow digestion and improve satiety. But what makes soy milk especially interesting isn't just blood sugar, it's what happens beyond blood sugar. When researchers analyzed multiple clinical trials, they found something important. Soy didn't consistently produce dramatic reductions in fasting glucose on its own. And that's important to acknowledge, because honesty matters more than hype. Soy milk is not a cure. It's not a miracle. But the same body of research repeatedly found improvements in cholesterol levels, particularly LDL cholesterol. That matters because heart disease remains one of the biggest long-term threats facing people with type 2 diabetes. In other words, soy milk may help support the organ diabetes puts at greatest risk. Imagine someone like David, 66 years old. He wanted to reduce dairy while keeping his meals simple. Instead of searching for complicated solutions, he switched to unsweetened soy milk, coffee, breakfast cereal, cooking. Everywhere he previously used dairy milk. Over time, his blood sugar remained stable, and his cholesterol numbers began moving in a healthier direction. One simple substitution, 2 potential benefits. That's what makes soy milk the strongest all-around choice in the milk aisle. But even soy milk isn't number 1. Because the most powerful strategy isn't about which carton you buy, it's about what you do with it. And that's where everything you've learned so far comes together. Now we arrive at number 1. And as promised, it isn't a special brand. It isn't expensive. And it isn't something you'll find on a hidden shelf at a health food store. It's a method. A strategy researchers call a protein preload. Here's what that means. Before eating the carbohydrate portion of your meal, you drink a small glass of unsweetened high-protein milk, ideally about 10 minutes beforehand. That's it. Simple. But the science behind it is remarkably powerful. When protein enters the digestive system before carbohydrates, it triggers a series of responses that change how the body handles the meal that follows. The stomach empties more slowly. Certain gut hormones are released, and insulin begins preparing for the incoming glucose earlier and more efficiently. As a result, blood sugar rises more gradually instead of surging upward all at once. The carbohydrates haven't disappeared. The meal hasn't changed. What changes is the timing, and timing matters. In one randomized controlled trial, researchers gave participants a small whey protein drink before a high-carbohydrate breakfast. The results were striking. Peak blood sugar levels were significantly lower, and average glucose remained lower for hours after the meal. A modest protein drink created a measurable difference in the body's response. Later research examining milk at breakfast found a similar pattern: higher protein, lower post-meal glucose, more stable blood sugar throughout the morning, and in some cases, benefits extending even into the next meal. Imagine someone like Eleanor, 72 years old. Every morning her breakfast produced the same frustrating result: a sharp rise in blood sugar. She didn't stop eating oatmeal. She didn't throw away her toast. She didn't redesign her entire diet. Instead, she made one small adjustment. 10 minutes before breakfast, she drank a small glass of unsweetened, high-protein milk. Same food, same kitchen, same morning routine, but a calmer and more predictable glucose response. The food didn't change. The order did. And that's what makes this strategy so powerful. After the age of 65, the body's early insulin response often becomes less efficient. Anything that helps insulin arrive sooner and work more effectively becomes increasingly valuable. A protein preload does exactly that. Without medication, without complicated planning, without additional cost. If you want to try it tomorrow, keep it simple. Before your highest carbohydrate meal of the day, drink about 150 to 200 milliliters of unsweetened high-protein milk. Soy milk works well. Ultra-filtered dairy milk works well. Even having it alongside the meal is helpful, though drinking it beforehand appears to provide the strongest effect. And now the entire list comes together. Number 5 gave you more protein and less sugar. Number 4 brought beneficial bacteria into the picture. Number 3 reduced carbohydrate exposure to almost nothing. Number 2 combined low sugar with complete protein and heart health benefits. And number 1 showed you how to use those options strategically. Because the biggest advantage wasn't hiding in the milk itself, it was hiding in the timing. So let's bring everything home. No milk reverses diabetes. No milk cures diabetes. Anyone promising that is selling a fantasy. But the choices you make every day genuinely matter. A better milk, a smarter swap, a simple protein preload before a meal. These aren't dramatic changes, they're practical ones. And practical changes are often the ones people actually stick with. Whether you're 50, 70, or 85, your body still responds to better decisions. Every steadier morning matters. Every smaller glucose spike matters. Every meal is another opportunity to work with your body instead of against it. Because long-term health rarely comes from one miracle solution. It comes from small choices repeated consistently. And today, you've learned 5 of them.